Hi there. My name is Abraham, and I'm going to be doing a interview with a senior engineer in technology. And we're going to be going over three questions that he and I are going, or they and I are going to be talking about. And I'm going to be asked these questions, and I'm going to be responding to them. And in this time, I will be recording it for my assignment for week number two. Um, it is the technical interview question. So let's go ahead and get started. First question basically is asking me um, structured data versus unstructured data. So when I was asked this question, my response was this. It's very simple. Structured data is data that's actually categorized, almost like you want to call it being filtered, because what happens is that in structured storage, basically, there's certain ethical part of it where certain things have to meet certain criteria. You have primary keys, you have foreign keys. There's a certain type of data types that have to be assigned with certain types of data to make a data table complete and functionable and friendly versus like unstructured data, or they want to call it object storage, which is basically just like a warehouse of data. If you think about it, it's a lot of random data that hasn't been, it's raw data that hasn't been looked at, dissected, put into populations, put into certain categories. It's just kind of just raw data. Good example would be um, like an Instagram account where somebody posts something and then you have a bunch of random people that give responses, and that is basically from the person who has the video or the comment available as something public. So that those sort of responses and feedbacks are all raw data because it's all from random people around the world or around your community or your friends. And at that point, you really don't have a moment to filter it. So that would be unstructured filtered data. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to question number two, which is called the precision question, numeric versus float. Very simple. So numeric is something that's preferred as a data type to be used in data collection, data analysis, data documentation, because numeric is an actual ending answer. There's no way around it. For instance, a very simple example would be bank institutions prefer to use the numeric data type versus a float, because floating data types can tend to give you false information, give you skewed information, and especially from a financial background, that's something that you don't want to have happen. So that would be a good example of the difference between numeric and float. Float, you can't get a, it's not a guaranteed, it's not a guaranteed answer, complete answer, accurate answer. That's the word I'm trying to think of, versus like numeric, which that's the exact answer. There's no way around it. One plus one is two. You can't get around that. One minus one is zero. So, I mean, that's why people use numeric. Number three, which is called the schema design. They're using JSONB, which is, I believe, JSON big, which is like big data. But the question is basically um, how you use relational database versus semi-structured database. And those are two different words with two different meanings, but it's very simple. And here is my answer that I would give to the senior engineer person who is interviewing me or we're having a conversation with. Relational data is basically data that can relate to its can relate to other data in a certain database in a certain database. Example, that's why you have what we call primary and foreign key. You have a primary key, that's a key that is basically a subject that's in a column, that's in on a table that has an relationship, meaning that it has the same sort of like name or identification as another table within the database. So you think of it like um, like a bubble And then inside that bubble are little bubbles, and each little bubble has some sort of like relationship with the other bubble, and that's how they communicate. I know that's kind of a weird scenario, but that's kind of what that means, relational data, um, or structured data. Basically, there's a relationship, and that's what you use to communicate databases, or excuse me, that's what you use to communicate between tables. Just that formula right there. So versus like semi-structural data, which is just like a bunch of like, as we spoke about this in the first question, which was the architect question. Semi-structural is not, it's just basically more random data. Basically means like I like to use the Instagram example because basically, you have a person who posts something to the public. It can either be to their group of friends or just to the whole public that, skims through Instagram, and you get random comments. The comments may not be screened or filtered at that time, so you can get all kinds of stuff coming from every direction depending on whatever they posted. So that's considered like I have to look at my notes, sorry, semi-structured data because it's kind of structured because the data that's being that's being presented or generated is structured toward a certain object that brought that data to them, if that makes any sense. So that would be my answer to that. And that's kind of the summary of it. So those are the three questions that I was presented with. I hope that I explained them in a very simple, normal response. I want to say that, yeah, that concludes my three questions. And like I said before, the questions were answered in a very simple manner, layman terms for any normal person to kind of understand. All right, so this would conclude week two technical interview question for my database class. And I want to thank you for all for viewing this and for following me. And I hope that this was very helpful. Thank you.